Joining us today to discuss the latest developments in the American economy and the potential economic impacts of Donald Trump's possible return to the U.S. presidency is Peter Tanous, an economic expert. Mr. Peter, welcome to Q News. We're glad to have you with us on the Economic Bulletin. Now, the European Union is preparing a list of American goods to target if Trump imposes new tariffs. How could a potential trade conflict with the European Union affect the U.S. economy and global trade relations?
What you just said shows how ridiculous Trump's proposals are for tariffs. He may not have been serious when he talked about 2,000%. It was probably just another one of his mindless ramblings. But looking at what is in his program, the idea of tariffs on everything that comes in, even in a 10th grade high school class, they would know that this is highly inflationary. And it is very unlikely to happen even if he is elected.
Now, regarding Trump's argument that tariffs will deter companies from offshoring jobs and bring manufacturing back to the United States, do you agree that this policy would effectively create more domestic jobs, or could it have unintended consequences on employment?
Let's look at the logic behind all this. Why do we import certain items instead of manufacturing them here? We import them because they are either cheaper or better than things that we are currently making. So if we adopted what he said, first of all, it takes years to build factories, so it would have no immediate positive effect. Secondly, if we are producing items here that cost more than the items we import, that would be highly inflationary. And this is so obvious that it explains why he was unable to answer the questions about it during the interview with the Economic Club of Chicago a couple of days ago.
Now, let's integrate China into our conversation. With Trump proposing tariffs as high as 60% on Chinese goods and 10% across the board, how would such a tariff structure affect inflation, especially given the Federal Reserve's ongoing efforts to manage it?
Well, that answer seems obvious, but first, let's back up a minute. Some tariffs on Chinese goods are necessary and already exist, because China is subsidizing the manufacture of some of their items, specifically electric cars. They are making electric cars at a much cheaper cost than they cost in Europe or the United States. So a tariff on that to protect our markets would make some sense. But a 60% tariff is completely ridiculous, because it would be highly inflationary. We import $500 billion worth of goods from China a year. Imagine the effect of a 60% tax on top of that. It truly doesn't make any sense at all.
Mhm. Now, Mr. Peter, looking ahead, can the U.S. economy sustain high tariffs in the long term, or would they slow down growth? And what sectors of the economy would be most vulnerable to such trade policies?
Yeah, any sector of the economy where we import a great deal of goods from China would be affected. And of course, those include a lot of manufactured goods, electronics, and other goods. And as we just talked about, also automobiles. The effect would be twofold. Number one, it would be highly inflationary. And number two, it would create a slowdown in the economy because fewer goods would be purchased at the higher prices.